Hey guys, what's going on? Josh here from the Mantido. This video is for those of you who have been through multiple relationships in your lives. You find yourself exhausted, you find yourself dealing with the same trauma, the same woman who's trying to control you. You feel like you're with somebody that just doesn't respect you anymore. Feeling like somebody that all they're trying to do is poke and prod you, and they're trying to get you to a point where they're going to emasculate you and hurt you. Try to get you to a point where they just want you to blow up, where they just want you to lose. It's like you're in a hamster wheel that keeps on running itself over and over again. And you just end up in square one. And you're like, how the hell was I here? I thought that I did the work. I thought that I've been doing the inner work. I thought that I've been going to therapy. I thought that I've been doing everything that I need to be doing in order to get myself to a place. I know this myself because I personally was married for 7 years. I actually got married when I was about 22 years old. And I had absolutely no boundaries. I had no idea what it is that it meant to have boundaries in a relationship, which is kind of hilarious. Because I remember when I was married, she would say to me, "Don't you have any boundaries?" It's like she was always trying to push my buttons, and she was seeking a response that I just wasn't giving to her. And the reason why I wasn't giving her this response, to be totally honest, was because I don't think I really had anybody else in my life that taught me how to make a good response, how to respond properly and effectively, how to actually be in a relationship. Every woman at the end of the day is going to prod. That's what they do. They test you and they test you and they test you. And they test you to see how strong you are internally. They test you to see how centered you are as an individual. They test you to see, is this a man that I can actually trust? And a man that I can really get behind and I can follow his lead. The problem is today that society doesn't really teach us how to do that. Back in the day, we had these hunter-gatherer tribes. We had more of a tribal society where men would teach other men, where men would have rites of passage. And those rites of passage would help a man learn what and how to do it with other men teaching him the way. We don't really have that in most societies these days. So we don't really have this situation where men are being taught what to do. And this specific reason of not knowing what and not knowing how to do it is exactly what brought me to this point here where I wanted to help other guys have success in dating and relationships. So here I am, 22 years old. I was actually in a religious school at that point in time. I am, and everything that I'm learning from the people there was that I need to make her happy, that I need to do my best to make something we call shalom bayit, which means peace in the home. So me, in my perspective, I assume that, making her happy means just giving her gifts, telling her nice things, letting her know that I was really there for her. Meanwhile, nobody was actually teaching us what the real way was for a man to behave in a relationship. Like, I was totally off and I was completely wrong. How many of you beforehand were actually told how to interact with women? Which brings me to this next problem here, is that these days you get online, you get on social media, and you do see some information that's helpful, but it's only surface level information. So when I realized that there wasn't enough information out there and I was doing all this research on women, on dating, reading a lot of books, must have read hundreds of books, must have, watched thousands of hours of YouTube videos. I took coaching classes. I even took a coaching course for myself to be able to help people. But I realized that, hey, I got to level up my dating game. And I did level up my dating game. I realized that leveling up your dating game, though, doesn't exactly help you with leveling up your game in a relationship. Most of the stuff that we're seeing online in social media is really surface level stuff. Everyone's just regurgitating the same thing and the same thing and the same thing over and over again, telling you the most basic things that you need to know in order to get a woman interested. But then how do you keep her interested? How do we keep her attracted? How do we make sure that we are listening to ourselves, that we're actually doing the necessary work in order to get not just the relationship that we want from her, but actually feel like a man in a relationship? Because I know that feeling emasculated in a relationship is something that is all too common. I know a lot of guys out there feeling their wives are nagging, their wives are telling them what to do all the time, that their wives don't respect them, that their wives don't want to have sex with them. I know what that feeling is like, to have a woman who doesn't want to sleep with you. It's the worst feeling in the world. It's the worst feeling in the world. And then not to know what to do, or to think that you know what to do, but to continue failing all the time. It's terrible. And going back to me at the age of 22, so here I am in the situation. I'm young, and she keeps on poking me, prodding me, and I'm just thinking that I could just, tell her nice things, and maybe I'll take the garbage out and stuff like that, and do what she tells me to do, and then I'm going to be a happy guy now. She's going to be a happy woman now. She's going to want to sleep with me. If you just take the dishes out, if you clean up, I'm going to want you more. And women know how to emote. Women know how to communicate things that don't necessarily represent exactly what it is that they want inside. A woman's not going to tell you that, hey, I'm testing you to see how you're going to react to me. So nobody told me that. She would say something and I would, do what she tells me to do and then see that I'm not getting any of the results that I really want. And in the meantime, I'm getting triggered I'm getting more upset, and I'm getting more upset while she's poking and prodding me. And I don't understand why she's acting like this. Why is she acting like such a bitch? Why is she acting like this? Why is she so mean to me? Now, I'm not excusing the individual that she was in the relationship, because at the end of the day, women need to have boundaries. And one of the things that I didn't know is that women seek their men to give them boundaries. Women seek their men to deal with them in a way sort of like a father deals with a daughter. Women need containers in relationships, and women need containers in general. And they're seeking their husbands to give them those containers. They're seeking their husbands or boyfriends or whatever to give them those boundaries. Little did I know back then, I didn't even know what boundaries were. She was like, "Don't you have boundaries?" I'm like, "Isn't that like a fence that you put around something?" Like, I realized back then, anytime that we would get into an argument or some sort of fight, I would just go into a space of like, I don't understand what's going on. So I was going through my own triggers, my own childhood triggers that were happening as a result of being with a woman. That's one of the things that they don't tell you, is that when you are in a relationship, you will be triggered again. If you have unhealed wounds, those unhealed wounds will come up. So when a woman is emoting, when a woman is being emotional, that it's very likely that you're not going to want to take it. That very likely that you're going to be defensive. Very likely that I myself have been defensive. That I do get defensive. I get defensive about things all the time. Why am I getting defensive? Well, I'm getting defensive because deep down inside, part of me actually believes what it is that she's saying. And on top of that, deep down inside, I'm getting defensive because at the end of the day, I don't think that she respects me. That's really because deep down inside, I probably don't respect myself. But that doesn't mean that we don't give them boundaries. It doesn't mean that we don't have boundaries for ourselves, saying this is okay, this is not okay. But what it means is that we know how to contain that we know how to center ourselves. I had a great book that I read called The Superior Man by David Deida. And in this book, which I highly recommend for everybody to read, he discusses how women are like nature. Women are wild. One second they're happy, lovey-dovey, and the next second they're upset and they're angry. And that we're supposed to be like that rock. And I listened to it a couple times, and I never fully even understood what it was that he was saying. And I don't think that I was even able to understand that he was saying in my own current relationship, because it took a while till I actually saw that side of her, till I saw that wild side of her, that side that needed that containment. A lot of women at the end of the day are going to take a much longer time to be able to show their sides, their feminine sides. And that's not necessarily a good thing. It's because society has taught them that they can't express their feelings, they can't show their emotions, that they need to do things independently. And at the end of the day, they can't trust men. It's not a good thing that society is doing, but I think ultimately one of the things that we're doing in relationships is that we're bringing them back to that. We're supposed to bring them back to their feminine qualities. But to bring them back to their feminine qualities, in order to lead them back to it, means that we need to be able to set up a container for them, and that we need to be centered ourselves when this is happening. So if you're like me when I was 22 years old, and to be totally honest, I've been 22 up until not even that long ago, who's getting triggered and honestly moved when a woman is having these emotional experiences, then she's not going to feel safe at the end of the day. And getting defensive is one of those things that easily happens. So we were talking about before not ending up in that same place. Why is it that I keep on ending up in the same place? Why is it that I feel like I'm going through the same experience again with a woman who's trying to poke and prod me when I had that before? It's because that those wounds have not been healed yet. And the reality is that there's only so much healing that an individual can have when they're by themselves. You can go to all the therapy sessions that you want. You can do all the inner work, all the shadow work that you want. But if you're not in front of a woman, if you're not mirrored, then you will not be able to integrate those shadows. Those shadows will end up staying. And this is the reason why so many people are single these days. And I ask myself the same question over and over again. I'm like, why the hell am I doing this? And sometimes I still ask myself that. Why am I doing this? Is it worth it? I know that a woman's supposed to add to my life. She's not supposed to take away from it. But how is she supposed to add to my life? What is she supposed to bring to me in my life? Anybody can go out and get somebody to clean their house, wash their dishes, and cook their food. Although I do think that's very important. And when I do pick a woman, I do pick one that's able to do that. But there's energy and there's unhealed wounds that's meant to be transmuted, to be transformed and directed into something that you want to create in your life. But for me, when I get into a fight, I'm like, why am I doing this? Well, like, why do I need this? And I think that it was maybe up until relatively recently that I started to really understand that there's really not much that you can do to change someone else, and that the only thing that you can do to change someone is change yourself. But if you're trying to change yourself for trying to change that person, then that's not real change, right? In a relationship, you as the man, you as the leader, ultimately have to be the one that's making change. So I realized that while I'm going through all my struggles and I'm going through arguments and stuff like that, or I'm going through conflict, really the solution to everything is me taking those fingers and pointing them inside. If I don't want to end up in the same place that I was before, if I don't want to end up in that same place where I was just in a bad relationship that turned absolutely vile, really I'm the one that needs to make that change internally. And some guys will go throughout their whole lives and never actually do that. This is why you see so many people out there that are single now. You know, there's so many guys out there, and there's so many of these channels that are talking about how the dating world is all messed up, how women are all messed up. I think that that is probably the biggest loads of shit that I've seen out there. Yeah, there's plenty of women that are messed up. And yes, there's a situation where women are on dating apps and they're swiping to 10% of the guys out there. But understand that what it is that you're creating internally, that belief system you're building, is what you're going to see. There's like, what, billions of people in the world? You're trying to tell me that there isn't one person out there who would be good for you? So I don't believe that. So after 22, after that 7-year marriage, I ended up getting divorced. Well, with 2 kids. I have a 14-year-old daughter and I have an 11-year-old daughter. And anybody that's been divorced knows how painful that can be, especially when you have kids. Anybody who's been divorced know how painful that can be when you feel like a failure, you feel like you're just not the kind of dad that you could have been. Anybody that's been through that situation knows what it's like to have your family break apart. It's like your heart is breaking. All you want to do is bring your kids together. All you want to do is be that man, be that dad you've always dreamed of being, but really you're not. You're really that failure. After I divorced, which was about 30 years old, I went on a banging spree. That's when I really started having a lot of fun for myself. And I think it was super important. I look back at it and I was like, sick. I went out and had all of the fun that I didn't have during my marriage. I went out and had all of the fun that I didn't have before either. And it was a good time. But eventually came to this point where I felt like I wanted something more and I wanted something deeper. It's funny because you look at it and you're like, wow, the grass is often greener on the other side. You know, when you're having all of these single fun hookups, eventually I was like, wow, I want something a little bit deeper. I want something better. I realized that I kind of want to focus my energy, and I was sick of going out and having sleeping with different women all the time. Now that I'm in a relationship, in my mind, I was like, wow, that was actually kind of fun, sleeping with different women all the time. I feel like I went out and I mastered what I would call basic dating. And this is one of the things I help guys with, especially guys that don't have the game, that if you feel like you just haven't had success in the dating game at all, and that you honestly haven't gotten laid and you don't feel confident with women, and it's kind of slow, or maybe you just fall in love too fast. Maybe you just want to find that one. You want to find that love, but every time that you find a lady, she eventually pulls out because she's not interested in you. Often you're more interested in her than she's interested in you. I know what that's like, being a big heartbreak. This is why I decided to help guys that are actually going through that very thing, because it's something that I see happening a lot with a lot of the men in these big cities. You'd think that guys would be getting laid a lot in a lot of these big cities, and the truth is that a lot of guys are not getting laid. A lot of guys aren't getting laid because society wants to tell them and tell us that they just need to be nice to women, and they're too afraid to make the move. They're too afraid to do what they need to do in order to get that woman. So this is one of the things I help guys with, and this is one of the things that I personally had mastered while I was single. Why? Well, not just because of my instincts, but because I had to learn about it. I could have read the same book like 11 times. I could have listened to the same podcast many times, spoke to people, practiced, went out, got embarrassed. I started to realize that approaching women was the best way to pick up girls, especially for somebody like me who was bald, because when I was on Tinder, I just felt like the women that were swiping me were all these old ladies. I'm not interested in old ladies. I wanted somebody that was going to be max 30 years old, between 20 and 30. I'm about 38. So I developed these skills. I developed these skills, how to go out, how to do pickup. I practiced them. And it worked. It worked really well. And the funny thing is that I practiced these skills. It worked really well. I went from a guy that really had no idea how to run game to a guy that really knew game. Let me give you an example. Before I actually knew what I was doing, I went out to a festival one time, and I met up with a friend there. He brought this super cute girl with him. She had freckles, she had long hair. It happened to be a girl that I actually had tried to hook up with like a while ago. She never even gave me the attention. She just sort of blew me off. But now that we're at this festival, there was another guy there, and now she was giving me all that awesome attention. I was really loving it. And we ended up hanging out at this festival. I could see she clearly has high interest in me. And long story short, at the end of the festival, we ended up hanging out for like the next 2 weeks. We're now having sex all the time at my house, at her house. We're traveling around. We're having a lot of fun. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. This is so much fun, especially when it's somebody that I wanted to be with before. It was at the end of those 2 weeks that I noticed that she stopped contacting me. She was messaging me less and less, and started becoming anxious inside. I was like, what's going on? Why is this girl pulling back? And as soon as I started feeling anxious inside, I would start messaging her back, messaging her more. Hey, what's going on? What's happening? And I noticed that throughout that time that her messages would get, she'd be responding to me more slowly and slowly. Her messages were getting smaller and smaller. Until eventually she approached me. She said, hey, let's meet up, let's chat. And she said, listen, I don't really want to be doing this anymore. And this is the whole thing. This is why you really need people that are skilled, that will help you in the dating game. Or you just go out and learn your freaking ass off, try it out. Or you can just do it the fast way. Somebody that can give you an exact system to try out that will work. If I knew what I know now, I would not have continued chasing her. As soon as I saw that she was pulling back, I just would have pulled back either. Very simple rule, which is one of the rules that I actually share within my system and in my book, The Antidote, which I highly recommend for you to check out, is you need to mirror her. We mirror her in every situation, in messages, in how long she takes to respond, the length of the messages. The best way to get somebody's attention is by dropping your attention, right? All I would have done at that point in time is I would have drawn back. I would have just stopped messaging her, or just kept my messages as short or shorter than hers, and her interest level would have picked up again. See, women do this thing where they're testing their men to see how valuable they are, to see how confident they are. They're always testing these things. And these aren't things that I had learned when I was younger. These aren't things that anybody talked about. These are things that you need to learn about. If you don't know about them, then you're not going to know. A lot of guys have a lot of ego out there, just don't want to learn, and that's fine. And still don't want to just get up and learn. They just want to try for themselves. So try the hard way, figure it out for yourself, or get some help, or download the book, which I'll link below in the comments. Which brings me to my next point, is that you do need to know game when it comes to relationships. You do need to know female psychology when it comes to relationships. But there's a whole nother side to it that comes into play when you're actually in a long-term relationship. The whole other side to it is your own inner game. And it's your inner game of how you interact with your emotions. Do you respond or do you react? Am I reacting because of the emotions I have inside, or am I responding? Because if I'm now reacting, the question is now, am I reacting to the way that she's interacting with me in the long-term relationship as a girlfriend? Or am I responding the way that I choose to respond? That's the whole inner game. For me, it's much, much easier in the beginning, in the dating stages, because in the beginning we have all of this infatuation, we have all of this chemistry that makes us see somebody, and that person is really just a figment of our imagination, and for her too. So all of that chemistry that we have going on doesn't actually allow us to see who that person is. So when we don't know who that person is, it's much easier to respond in a way that's maybe in a way that's more calculated. We don't get as triggered in the beginning of the relationship. But as soon as we have the crisis of disillusionment happen, and the crisis of disillusionment is that point where that chemistry fades. We see the person in front of us without all of that fluff. We see them for who they are. Now, when we see them for who they are, they're actually mirroring back to us who we are. And it's at that point to become much more easily triggered. Because now you're really seeing yourself. Now you're seeing through the lens of your own ego. And it's only when you see them through the lens of your own ego that you actually start to react. And this is where the real work begins. How am I going to interact while she's having one of her wild female phases? How am I going to contain that? Because the only way for me to contain that is by containing myself. That's the real game. So on one hand, you're learning the game that you learned in dating, which you got to know. You're using that same game later on in the relationship, but then you're also having to learn that inner game of how do you react. Some people will never actually learn. A lot of guys will never go through the process, and a lot of guys will decide to stay single and not go into that long-term relationship stuff. But one thing that I feel that I'm learning right now is that there is all of this energy that us as humans, we're like transistors. All of the emotions that we have, well, I think Tony Robbins said it best. He said, what is emotion? Emotion is energy in motion. Energy in motion. That our emotions, what we're experiencing, is really the energy that is flowing through us from this universe. And as a man, in order to create something, we need to be able to transmute that creative power and that creative energy into what it is that we're doing. So what I'm starting to learn and I'm starting to see right now is that maybe, just maybe, that energy and motion, that emotion, those triggers, those wounds, which are there and are meant to be transmuted into something that empowers us, into something that we can create, can only happen in the face of the feminine. In order for wisdom to be used, it has to be understood. You cannot take basic wisdom and use it. Once we understand that wisdom, then we can apply that wisdom. That's the application. So that energy, the male energy that we draw down, in a sense, has to be channeled. So what I'm learning and what I'm seeing is, and you can let me know in the comments, tell me what you think if you've seen this in your own life. If wisdom is like water, the water inside of a river is likened to wisdom. And then the banks of that river is likened to the feminine energy. that although the man and his job is to penetrate, his job is to lead. Through leading and penetrating, the woman helps to create the banks of that river. So for a man to be able to channel that energy, those emotions, he must channel it himself. And the only way for him to channel it himself is to be put in front of a mirror that's going to trigger and to bring those emotions up. That's where that transmutation happens. And this is something that I'm discovering myself at this point. That's where the transformation happens. The transformation happens inside, but it needs a catalyst. And the feminine energy is that catalyst. And this is why we see many people who do not want to experience that. But ultimately, it's that unification of those two energies drawing down the most power in order to manifest and create. We have a woman, we have a man, we have a baby. So for you to be able to move forward in your life, for you to be able to get to that point where you're not taking 4 steps backward and 1 step forward, you need to become aware, one with your emotions, and to be able to channel them to a point that no matter how triggering a person is in front of you, no matter how triggering a woman is to you, that you don't let her move you. And all of that is a practice. And it's also practice to understand internally that even with that, you need to have and know what your boundaries are. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. Smash the like button, subscribe. If you want to sign up for a one-on-one consultation, you can click the link below in the description. Please share, comment below. Tell me what you think, and catch you guys in the next video.